Hello.
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 Hi there.
Hello and welcome to the RadioTimes.com Doctor Who podcast. My name's Huw Fullerton. I'm joined today by Morgan, Jeffery and Patrick Cremona, and we're chatting about The Timeless Children, the series finale to Doctor Who Series 12. Lot went on, right? Lots to talk about.
Yeah.
fair old bit to talk about. Still processing.
Yeah, we're obviously doing this the morning after, so we're still in a state of shock at all the big revelations. But we should also, we're also trying to talk about what we thought about the episode, and what do we think of it as a finale, as an individual episode? How does it stack up?
For me, as a Doctor Who fan, someone who is immersed in the lore of Doctor Who, the first time I watched this episode, I found it really exciting because it's dealing with big ideas that are core to Doctor Who, and it's throwing a lot of them out the window. So that's exciting. I just think that if you're not immersed in all of that mythology, maybe the episode was a little bit talky. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of exposition, not a huge amount of action. But then I don't know. I watched it with someone who's not a huge fan, and actually she found it really, really enjoyable, really exciting. So maybe I'm overthinking it, and as a fan, I'm thinking, is this okay? Is this cool?
Do you like this? Do you like this?
Is this accessible for a casual audience?
Patrick, what do you think?
I think I kind of broadly agree. While it was on, I was really enjoying getting caught up in the kind of eventness of it was kind of felt very momentous. Again, there's maybe some storytelling techniques that work, like as you say, lots of exposition that, and from an objective point of view, maybe aren't the best way of telling a story. But I think that more or less worked because of Sacha Dhawan's performance as the Master, which I think really carried the episodes, and it really had to carry the episodes because he was in all of it.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically the main character for about the first 40 minutes.
He was in it twice.
Yeah, I mean, you had the Master who was subconsciously, beating up Jodie Whittaker's mind, and you had the Master who was chatting to Ashad, the lone Cyberman at RIP. So I thought it was great. I mean, he said to us in an interview before this episode aired that he was kind of worried about what the reaction would be like, and people were like, oh, is the Master going to do something really bad? I don't think it's that so much as that he knew that it was a lot, right? That he's doing a big performance, he's doing some new stuff, like he kind of delves into a kind of dark, melancholic underbelly to the Master, which we haven't really seen before, so I can see why he might be worried about that, but I think he really pulled it off. And I think, like you said, I mean, I think he does a lot of work to kind of keep this episode going. For my money, I kind of agree with both of you in that I enjoyed the revelations and stuff, and it was fun. Like, I wasn't bored, and like I actually quite like the idea of the Doctor having this whole past life. If you look at it in terms of like the sort of dramatic meat of the episode, I kind of feel like it is essentially in episode 2 of this series. The Master says, "Oh, everything you know is a lie. The Timeless Child, that's a secret." We wait 8 episodes and he goes, "Okay, I'm not going to just tell you what that is." Like, the Doctor doesn't really find anything out for herself. She's just a couple of visions and sort of is a bit mardy for a while. And then he just sort of lays it all out.
One of the criticisms I did see of this episode was that the Doctor is fairly inactive. I mean, I know she's active in the Matrix, but the Doctor does spend quite a large chunk of this episode literally unconscious.
Yeah, having things explained. Yeah.
While the Master and Sacha Dhawan absolutely steps up to the plate. I think he's phenomenal in this episode, but he does do a lot of the heavy lifting. While Jodie Whittaker, although great in the episode, doesn't get a whole lot to do until maybe like the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, and then she does have a kind of good heroic moment at the end. Yeah. But yeah, I know what you mean. I don't really know what the answer is because I can't work out how you would tell this story differently in terms of like that. If you've got the Doctor in the Matrix and stuff, I don't really know how that would play differently. The one thing I did think was sort of a missed opportunity was to have the Doctor reacting to some Time Lords or Tecteun, or however you pronounce it, or something. Like, obviously they're all dead, but the sort of revelations that, oh my God, I've been lied to my whole life. This woman, I have this parent I never knew about and she betrayed me. All this stuff. Like, I don't think that lands as hard when they're not there.
She doesn't really confront them. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. She's just the Master who's found this out, is telling her. And he's not, he's upset by it, but it isn't like he did this to her.
Yeah, and she's like, why did they lie? And he's like, I don't know. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
No, it's a good point, but maybe that's something they're holding back. Maybe have we seen the last of Tecteun? Have we seen the last of the Time Lords? Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like too much mythology to introduce, not to then go back and revisit it.
Presumably, we're going to talk about what we can expect from Series 13 in another episode of the podcast, but presumably a lot of this stuff is things that will be picked up. I mean, everything's not solved. We're still not 100% how the Ruth Jo Martin Doctor fits in. We think we kind of know now, but we're not sure. We're not exactly sure what the Doctor's been up to when she worked for the Division, the Spooky Division, which I feel like is a new skin on the Celestial Intervention Agency, which was the Time Lord CIA from the classic series.
Well, interesting. Yeah, so I did a bit of digging, and the Celestial Intervention Agency is mentioned in Doctor Who in The Deadly Assassin, Tom Baker's story from 1976, but sort of very much in passing. And this whole idea that the CIA, as it's punningly called, was like a Time Lord secret police who interfered in time, but they kept things covert so that the High Council would have deniability. That's all from spin-off media, from the books and the audio plays and so on. So this idea of the division is actually kind of bringing that idea into the TV series for the first time.
I mean, speaking of bringing out obscure bits of canon, we should talk about this. I mean, in Jodie Whittaker's first series, you know, a lot of the chat around it was, God, wouldn't it be nice if we had some more callbacks to Classic Who, some classic monsters, some, you know, Easter eggs and stuff. There was a bit, but not loads. And then who'd have thought at the end of her second series, we'd all be talking about the Morbius Doctors.
Morbius Doctors.
And how they are now canon. And which is just bizarre. And it's one of these things that we've kicked around for a few weeks. We sort of talked about it because we thought it would be one of those things where technically it could be possible that they would now be canon. They kind of not explicitly say, oh yeah, the Morbius Doctors are now canon, but in the Doctor's kind of big brainwave moment when she blows up the Matrix, they show the Morbius Doctors more than once. If you look closely, they have all these sort of vignettes from the modern and the classic series, and you see the Morbius Doctors kind of small, and then towards the end, as they're flashing through Doctors, they flash through a bunch of the Morbius Doctors. And I thought that was great. Like, it's, I tweeted this, and I think some people don't disagree, but a lot of people complaining that, you know, Chris Chibnall in Doctor Who is attacking Doctor Who canon. I'm like, it's technically more canonical than it's been for 44 years.
Yeah. Should we explain what the Morbius Doctors are for anyone who's unaware?
Yeah, sorry, for anyone listening. Morgan, do you want to take it away?
So in a Tom Baker story, again from the 70s, there was a story called The Brain of Morbius, in which, long story short, the Doctor, you know, he engages in a sort of battle of wits, a mental battle with this Time Lord criminal called Morbius. And as he's struggling against Morbius, we see on a screen images of the Doctor, and you see the fourth Doctor, who was the Doctor at the time, then the third, then the second, then the first, and then 8 more faces. And the mystery has always been, well, who are these faces? And some fans have said, oh, it's past incarnations of Morbius. But the intention of the production team at the time, they've come out and said this, was that they were previous incarnations of the Doctor from before William Hartnell. Now, that didn't seem to fit with later Doctor Who lore, this idea of the 12 regeneration limit. And so it was sort of forgotten, like brushed under the carpet a little bit. But now the Timeless Children has established not only that 12 regeneration limit is pretty arbitrary and just something imposed by the Time Lords, but also we see the Morbius Doctors, we see these 8 faces, which were actually just the faces of the Doctor Who production team at the time. It's like the script editor, the location manager, I think the producer. And
we're all going to get calls from Big Finish.
And so now these are all, we can take them as canon because they are incarnations of the Timeless Child.
Yeah, exactly. Or of the Doctor, because obviously Jo Martin calls herself the Doctor. It depends on where she fits in. Is she right before William Hartnell? Is she like 5 in working for the division, and then these guys come after? Do these guys come right before William Hartnell if, you know, this works out? I mean, or is it like, you know, I doubt we're ever going to go, here's an episode all about the Morbius Doctors and how they all fit in. This might be the extent to which we get that closure.
And probably should be as well.
Yeah, there's a little bit. I mean, there's a reason that spin-off media exists, right?
Yeah.
But it's for us all to fill in. I mean, one of the things I saw someone saying about this episode actually is that for them it sort of felt like someone was rewriting the TARDIS wiki in front of their eyes, for better and for worse, in terms of that is kind of fun, but also is there dramatic kind of, I said meat already, but is there dramatic meat in that? I think it's interesting. I think it kind of, you get a lot of it from Sacha's performance and Jodie's performance. And I think a lot of it will be about how this carries on in future series. Like, for example, in episode 5, the thing where there's a new Doctor in of itself is interesting, but it's more interesting because if there's a new Doctor and Jodie's Doctor is really terrified of her, that's what lands that episode, I think, is her reaction, which is so different to the reaction someone like David Tennant had when he thought he met a version of himself, you know. And I think I'll be interested to see what these kind of revelations do to the series, whether they do much, because obviously you always want the Doctor just off travelling, having fun with her friends and stuff, and it will always revert to that. So I'm interested to see how much this will actually change.
Yeah, it may not come back into play, you know, at all until maybe like the series 13 finale, and arguably it shouldn't, because as much as it is fun for Doctor Who to sometimes do these big mythology episodes, or mythology busting episodes in this case, it shouldn't be the case every week, right? Because that's just alienating.
Yeah, we even saw after episode 5 this series, there was a few episodes where it didn't really touch on that kind of stuff as well. So there is precedent.
Let's go to Madagascar and not discuss this at all.
Yeah. So there's precedent for, you know, blowing up all this mythology stuff, and then just we'll take a few weeks off that. So
we should talk a little bit about the companions, because What did we think about their storyline this week? Because it's not the thing I thought very often about the Timeless Child and about the Roof Doctor and stuff is that it really doesn't involve the companions very much.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's partly the reason there's been these rumours of them departing. We know now that they're back in the festive special, which is coming later in the year. But they could leave after that. I'm not saying they will. It's possible. But they don't feel like they're a big part of this storyline for the Doctors. Like, they come and help her, and they're off doing their own thing, but, they're not really in it with her.
I think it's tough because this episode, more than any other, is about the Doctor. Not just the Doctor as the lead character, but it's all about the Doctor's identity and who she is. So the companions do end up sidelined, possibly even more so than they have been previously.
I think it's odd because it felt like they were more, like they were still in it and they still had a storyline. I think it's because this series, we've said a lot, has sort of found kind of success in just putting the companions off doing something completely different while the Doctor's involved in something. And in this, like Ryan killing a Cyberman, like nailing his basketball hoop at last after Spyfall.
But you know what? I felt like they actually did more with the companions here. Having just said they were sidelined, I felt like, although their screen time was very limited, I felt like they actually had some more character beats.
Graham and Yaz had a really good moment together.
And it was quite touching. I just think it's interesting that all that comes without them being involved in the sort of main story, if you get me. Like, they're still fighting the Cybermen while the Doctor's off dealing with all the stuff. I don't know how you would involve them, though, is the thing. Like, it's...
it is, they are relegated to B plots, but as you mentioned, there is that really touching Graham and Yaz scene, which I thought both Bradley Walsh and Amanda Gill performed brilliantly. And then, Ryan getting the payoff to missing the hoop in Spyfall. Who thought that was the real arc of Series 12? Ryan's trick shot.
It's maybe slightly less emotional than the moment between Graham and Yaz. It's Ryan's. But,
it's emotional.
Equally, emotional in a different sense,
in
maybe.
A different way.
In his final appearance, he'll finally ride his bike and do a YouTube video all about it.
You're doing it, mate.
God, yeah. I'm trying to think what else there's so much in this episode to cover. I mean, I kind of want to talk a little bit about poor old Shad, the lone Cyberman, as well. I wrote a piece this week saying about how it was nice to see the Cybermen take centre stage again, and Shad was a great villain. Cybermen obviously slightly pushed stage left in this episode, and then Ashad was killed. But, I mean, I think it kind of worked. Like, I kind of liked how Ashad's big scheme was actually quite boring, and then the show said, no, that's actually quite boring, let's do something else. Let's do kind of sassy, fabulous Time Lord Cybermen with enormous headdresses and capes who can regenerate slightly pointlessly, even though they're dead.
It is like, I think we all kind of knew going into this episode that the Cybermen were going to be sidelined somewhat because
there wasn't enough time to do everything.
Right, because the Master's back and we're going to get answers about the Timeless Child and Joe Martin's Doctor and so on. So we kind of knew that would happen. But it does happen in a way that the Master goes, your plot's rubbish. Do my plot much better. Which is slightly odd. And I do think Ashad was a character with a lot of potential.
But you never know.
Do you know what? Stranger things have happened.
He could come. I'd be surprised, but I mean, he did get blown up. He got shrunk.
He got shrunk and then blown up.
With a death particle.
Seems fairly definitive, but you never know with Doctor Who. I guess another thing as well is that not only does this episode establish that there were many unknown number of incarnations before the first, quote unquote Doctor, it also totally changes the Doctor's origin in the sense that although she is still a Time Lord, because some people are saying she's not a Time Lord because we've now established that's just a title that the Gallifreyans bestow upon themselves, she's not a native Gallifreyan.
No, she's not. She's from somewhere else. I mean, it's one of the things that I think is easy to get over in the episode, but she's found on this distant world. She's not necessarily from that world. She's found underneath a kind of another version of the boundary.
The boundary.
Yeah, so it's implied that she comes from some other dimension. Maybe in that dimension, everyone can regenerate. Or maybe she is literally the only thing who can do that.
Maybe she's the only one. Maybe she's not part of a wider race. Maybe she is part of a wider race, but she's the only one with the power to regenerate. Or maybe there's another regenerating race. It's all up for grabs.
Yeah, totally. And maybe there's lots of different things they can do. Maybe she's a superhero in the other world. Maybe the Doctor had lives before this child. But it's out there. It's possible.
Yeah.
So everyone, please write your fan fiction and send it to us.
It's all canon now.
It's all canon. It's really interesting, and I think. There was a sort of storyline, wasn't there, in the Sylvester McCoy years that they were sort of toying with, which never really made it to screen, which was that he was like a special Time Lord.
The Cartmel Master Plan. Yeah, named after a script editor at the time, Andrew Cartmel. And the idea was that the Doctor was one of the founding fathers of Gallifrey, that there had been a sort of version of the Doctor before the first Doctor. So again, we're getting back to this idea. And that version was called The Other. This character was called The Other, who sort of founded Time Lord Society with Omega and Rassilon, and then later became the Doctor. So arguably...
Kind of happened.
We're in a roundabout sort of way.
The Timeless Child is The Other.
Yeah, we're seeing the Cartmel master plan finally executed on screen. So these things, again, Morbius Doctors, The Other, these things have all been hinted at in the past. You know, this episode doesn't really do anything that revolutionary in that sense. You know, it's all been implied before.
Yeah, and also a lot of the thing people are saying about it changing the status quo. The status quo is always changing in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Like, William Hartnell was supposed to be a human, right, from the future?
In the original, like, concepts and...
Yeah, like, that's the kind of... like, and then the Time Lords, you know, get invented.
Yeah.
And, you know, Susan built the TARDIS. Or no, he built the TARDIS, Susan named the TARDIS.
Yeah, exactly.
All this stuff. Like, it kind of gets shifted and changed. And I think that's part of the fun. Equally, you know, if you don't like this bit, it will probably get changed.
Right, next showrunner, next era, they'll reveal something else that undoes this or changes it slightly.
Remember the Doctor's half human? Not anymore.
It's the kind of thing where if there's not enough big changes going on, people will complain it's too lightweight, where's the kind of big moment?
Well, this is kind of what happened in Jodie's first series.
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. It's just kind of the reverse complaints from last season to this season. It's kind of, how are you ever going to make everyone happy without making some kind of big change?
I prefer a big swing. Like, I prefer a big swing. Like, I'm not saying this did miss at all, but I mean, you know, even if you swing for something and, you know, it doesn't make everyone happy, I'd prefer that to just not doing anything, just trundling along.
A lack of ambition.
Yeah, like, it's certainly ambitious. And also, I kind of, like you said, the thing is, a lot of this ties back to the classic series in a way that, you know, arguably other eras of New Who have tied back to the classic series. But this is kind of really digging deep at this stage.
But if they had said, you know, oh, what about my past with the Master and our childhood on Gallifrey, and they'd said that never happened and this never happened and William Hartnell never existed, I sort of understand the backlash a bit more. But they were very clear to say that all that stuff happened.
And for this version of the Doctor, that was still her defining memory, so it doesn't change that aspect of it. It's
absolutely, and so all it's done, it hasn't taken away a huge amount. It's only added more mythology. The only thing that's really been sort of taken away or actually changed is the fact that the Doctor is from Gallifrey. And I personally find that really exciting. You know, for the first time in 50 plus years, ever since that was established in 1969, you know, we've sort of the Who of Doctor Who didn't really apply anymore, and now it does for the first time in like 5 decades, and I think that's exciting.
I think so too, and I think, you know, there's also this thing about the Matrix missing memories of what the Doctor's been up to, which is slightly bizarre because, you know, I was saying earlier, the Timeless Child is this huge scandal that would, you know, completely destroy the society of Time Lords, but we'll leave that in.
We'll bury it deep, but you have to really go looking.
Whereas it's like, oh, but then what did the Doctor do when she worked for the CIA? No, don't want to see that, don't want to see that. Which, I mean, maybe everything about the division is redacted, right? Maybe that's just de facto that happens all the time, or maybe, you know, it's implied in the episode that the Doctor's sort of surrogate mother / father Tectu and like removed it and put in this Brendan stuff. Oh yeah, we found out who Brendan is. He's a sort of, it was weird though, because we were saying that Brendan's either a Cyberman simulation or he's a Time Lord, and he was a Time Lord simulation. So it was a combination.
Halfway there.
Yeah. But the thing I thought about it was quite interesting is, obviously these things are missing, and it's a little bit like, this is what did the Ruth Doctor get up to? What terrible things could the Doctor have done for the, you know, Time Lord secret police? And part of me wonders if the Doctor herself or himself got rid of these memories. You know, maybe we'll maybe that's something we'll find out. The Doctor will realise all these things that they've done, and maybe the Doctor at the time wanted to be rebooted and have the memory wiped. You know, like Brendan, he is handcuffed to a chair in the bit of filtered memory that we don't have the corresponding Doctor bit for, if that makes sense. But he gets this clock, he retires, he sort of goes with these people into this room.
And we don't know how many times the Doctor's memory was erased and how many lives she led. So it's possible on the last time he did make the choice, him, herself. Also, I think it's interesting that, as you say, the Timeless Child stuff, which seems like utterly earth-shaking or Gallifrey-shaking, that remains in the Matrix. But there's other stuff that's removed. So that stuff's even
bigger.
Even bigger, which is clever because they're like, you know, we've got even bigger stuff to play out.
Right, now let's think of what that is. Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's fun, and bizarrely, it's a little bit similar to what the storyline was for Captain Jack Harkness when he started. Was he'd worked for the Time Agency, and they'd removed years of his life, and he wanted to find out what that was. And we sort of ignored that after a while. But you know, I think it's fun. It gives the Doctor something to sort of seek out. I mean, we still don't know who Lee was. Remember Lee?
Yeah,
Ruth's husband.
Neil Stevens' character.
He was a Time Lord. Don't know what the deal was with him and where he came from.
That's going to be the arc of Series 13.
Who is Lee?
Who is Lee?
Yeah, no, it's fun, and it's fun that there's so much to sort of speculate about because, after the Battle of Ranskoy of Kolos, what were we talking about?
Will we see Tim Shaw again?
Yeah.
Do we care?
Yeah, definitely. And after this, there's loads of exciting stuff to look forward to. And also, ends on a big cliffhanger, right? We haven't really talked about that. A slightly bizarre cliffhanger out of nowhere.
Well, I thought it was a slightly bizarre cliffhanger in the sense, I guess it does link back to episode 5, in fairness, but it doesn't really tie in with the rest of the episode and the Timeless Child reveals, nor does it really, I mean, it will, of course, but it doesn't seem to tee up the upcoming festive special.
Well, to be fair, it's clearly riffing on the David Tennant, Rusty Davies era, where at the end of Doomsday, he's really upset, and then a random bride turns up in the TARDIS. Like, that's not linked to Doomsday, although
True.
It's maybe a little linked because he just lost the love of his life, and here's a bride. But it does tee up an episode called The Runaway Bride. And similarly with Voyage of the Damned, when he's sad about whatever he was sad about that year, and the Titanic bursts in, and then it's like, oh wow, Voyage of the Damned, this is about the Titanic.
Yeah.
Well, what?
Yeah.
But they didn't always do it. There's famously a scene from
Journey's End,
which you can find on YouTube if you're so inclined, where the Doctor's sad about wiping Donna's memory, and then it goes like, what, and then the Cybermen kind of really awkwardly stand up behind him. It's not been finished, that scene.
And I think they decided that was just tonally out of whack, right?
Yeah, it would be better to look at sad David Tennant drying his quiff.
I'm actually just realising for the first time that every David Tennant series ends with him sad in the TARDIS.
Increasingly sad.
Whatever he's sad about at the end of this series.
Yeah, they raise the stakes of sadness. So in this, the Doctor is contemplative.
Yeah.
I liked the kind of callback though. I do kind of find it fun, the sort of twist cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I get what you mean about it not being that related, but the thing like you said that gets me is the next episode we're told is called Revolution of the Daleks. Presumably in that they're rising up against something, not just spinning around in small circles, although that has happened before. But then I'm like, so was the Jadoon? I'm just sort of like, well, we're just going to have to wait for the Doctor to get out of his prison and then get back to the main story.
Yeah, right. I was expecting maybe the Daleks to show up at the end. So when it was the Jadoon, I was like, oh, okay, that's a left field choice. But
yeah, and she gets zapped to a prison with a sonic screwdriver, presumably.
How will she get out of this one?
Mystery. Tune in 10 months. But like, it's interesting. It ended differently to how I expected. I kind of thought everyone be back together and resolved. Like, because at the moment, as far as we know, the companions think the Doctor's dead, right? Or they don't know because Ko Sharma's ran out.
Yeah.
But we don't actually know what they think happened to her. They've gone back in their TARDIS house.
Yeah, what's going to happen to the TARDIS house?
I reckon
just kind of lying about there.
It's the same thing that happened to the Master's Kansas Australian Outback TARDIS, which just left somewhere.
And the tree TARDIS. There's just all these TARDISes, just sort of scattered around the universe for people to find.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trouble with Chameleon Circus, right? You never know.
No, you never know.
If she ever has to find that one again, she's going to be like knocking on various trees. Oh dear. Also, the Master, appears to die. Although actually, Morgan, you pointed this out, but you can hear him say something.
Yeah, you can. Just before the death particle detonates, you can hear the Master say something along the lines of "Quick, over here!"
All of you through here.
All of you through here. Which seems a little bit like it might have been ADR sort of dialogue added after the fact. I think to explain away, when the Master returns, you can say, as we know, there were plenty of TARDISes lying around, so he just got into one of those and escaped.
I thought it was odd. I don't think you even need the little dialogue because you assume he'll escape, and you could have explained it after that. The thing that surprised me more was the fact him saying all of you through here implies that they're going to bring back the Time Lord Cybermen.
Ko Sharma died for nothing.
Yeah, oh dear. But that's kind of a status quo, right? We're leaving this series. Basically, the Doctor and her companions are separated. She's in prison. The Master is off doing who knows what. Time Lords are gone. Again. But this time really gone.
Literally, they burn up every single particle of them.
Yeah.
They cannot come back, but probably will.
And, with Ruth's out there, this other Gallifrey, which Ruth and Gat and Lee were from, presumably is past Gallifrey, is seemingly accessible now. We're not really sure why.
And Joe Martin's Doctor does appear in this episode, quite a key moment.
Of a kind, yeah.
But within the Matrix, and for a reasonably brief scene, it feels to me like we maybe haven't, even though the Timeless Child arc is resolved, we maybe haven't seen the last of that Doctor.
I was surprised not to get more of her, actually. I mean, I'm glad they didn't, because there was a lot in this episode already, but I think it was, use her sparingly. Yeah. I think they definitely need to have a story with her in.
Well, and she's great, so it would be a total waste if we never see her again.
It would be really good. I'd be surprised. Like, I kind of want to see another full adventure with her, because we only had her for about 10 minutes at the end of Fugitive of the Jadoon as well.
Yeah, and when the reaction was so positive towards her particularly, I think you wonder if even if there wasn't plans before to bring her back.
Totally,
they'll look at that reaction.
If nothing else, Big Finish are calling up her agent right now. But
blowing up her phone.
The Fugitive Doctor Chronicles coming soon.
Yeah. Big love to Big Finish. We're not being mean. Yeah,
I'd buy it.
We'd be first in line. So I mean, again, there's a lot to process. We've talked about this. I think a lot of people aren't going to like some of these changes to the Doctor's canon. That's fine. I didn't like the hybrid. But, the hybrids, we sort of don't talk about that anymore.
No.
And fundamentally, the Doctor's going to stay the same.
Yeah, this is it. It's Doctor Who, right? It changes all the time. Some changes stick, some changes don't, like the half-human thing. Even the ones that stick, you can just ignore it if you don't like it. It's
there's
fine.
a new John Hurt Doctor. It doesn't come up very often.
No, exactly. If the changes to canon don't really affect the way in which Doctor Who tells stories, which is, I think, as you said, the Doctor arrives somewhere, has an adventure, defeats an evil threat, and carries on doing that. And that's not going to change. That's never going to change.
No, it's not. Like, no matter who's in the TARDIS, who was in the TARDIS, who could possibly have been in the TARDIS, and whether the scream of the Shauker is canon or not, please write in. That's that. I think we've covered that pretty thoroughly, right?
I feel like I don't really understand everything that happened, but I feel like I've talked about it enough.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening. We're going to keep on with the RadioTimes.com Doctor Who podcast in the coming weeks. We're hoping we'll do a proper look back at Series 12. We'll look forward at the festive special Revolution of the Daleks and Series 13, what we know about that. And, then we'll come up with some other exciting stuff to do. We have a few ideas, but we won't spoil anything yet because we might change our ideas. So thank you for listening to our reviews this series. Thank you for listening to this review. And obviously, please do let us know in the comments what you thought about the episode, what you think about our personalities and abilities as podcasters. I'm joking. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let us know if you've got any theories about what to expect from the Ruth Doctor, the Timeless Child stuff, and, whether there's anything you were confused about in the episode. For now, I've been Huw Fullerton.
I've been Jeffrey.
And I've been Patrick Cremona.
And thank you very much for listening.